Welcome everyone to a brand new episode of AV Unplugged. We are coming to you live from the show floor of InfoComm 2026. Brought along a couple friends to talk about the AV IT convergence. Why are we still having this conversation in 2026? First up, we've got Gareth from Barco. Gareth, say hello.
How are you doing?
And we've got David as well. David, thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right, so we are going to talk, like I said, AV, IT. We've been talking about this convergence forever, it seems like. What are some of the factors that are still preventing us from getting to a point where we feel like, okay, it's here and we've accepted it and the impacts are being felt? I mean, in some ways that's obviously true, but why are we still talking about it continuing at this point? So, any thoughts? Let's jump right into it.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I mean, I think we're still talking about this because we still think we're special. Yeah. As an industry, we think we're like our traffic, our like systems, our equipment is in some way unique. As we're starting to see things like IPMX, NDI, all of these sort of IP native formats, is we're just traffic. Yeah.
It's worth mentioning too. So, Gareth, you're with Barco in particular, the control rooms.
Yes.
Right. Yep. David, you want to introduce yourself as well and give our audience a little background?
Yeah. I'm a senior principal at SM&W, so we're a 100% design consulting firm. Product and vendor agnostic, and we pretty much work in every vertical market, including command and control centers. So.
Yep. Okay, cool. Yeah. David, why do you think we're still having this conversation?
I think we're still having the conversation because people won't accept the fact that they are one small part of a very large engine, but every piece of the engine is important, but everybody thinks that they're the most important part of the engine. Yeah. I use analogies a lot when I talk. I think we're still having the conversation because of how AV, how IT, how everything has evolved into one, especially in command and control, it has to be looked at as one holistic environment. I think we have to get away from siloing AV is AV, IT is IT, security is security. It is converged. Everything's on the network now. So we have to just accept that, play well in the sandbox together and just realize it's one holistic approach. And, to that point, something we were talking about earlier is getting all those people together early on in the process.
Yeah.
So.
But also being aware that everyone has their own language.
Yeah.
We learnt from broadcast. Pro AV is sort of an offshoot really of broadcast. And in broadcast, cameras, audio, all of this is the reason, is all that money. Whereas, we're trying to achieve things in Pro AV and control rooms, but, in meeting rooms.
Yeah.
That the screen in this screen in this meeting room is not why we're in this room.
Right.
Doesn't matter what's on that screen.
Yep.
We're here to talk. So understanding what people are trying to achieve, and speaking their language.
Yeah.
If we want to sit on the network, we need to be able to speak network language.
Yeah.
Right.
And more, it's not about really being able to talk to the IT team or the network team. It's talking to the cyber team, and it's being able to have that conversation on what you're doing, why you're doing it, and understanding that they might say no, but they're saying it for a reason.
Right.
And quite often, every cyber team I've worked with wants to say yes.
Yeah.
They want to find that solution. They're not there to stop things happening. They just want it to go the right way and work in the right way.
It's interesting that you mentioned the broadcast AV convergence as well. I heard someone earlier today, we were talking about this as well, said broadcast didn't necessarily ask to be a part of AV, but we have to evolve and accept it, right? And it's not that he was saying that in a contentious way or anything like that, but just saying that change is inevitable because of the way that these systems have evolved and everything is being more tightly integrated, right? So I guess what does that evolution then look like? Is it just a matter of people need to kind of let go of the old way of doing things? Is it what's the balance here, David? Go ahead.
I think you hit the nail on the head. And one of my pet peeves as a consultant, we get into and have a conversation with an end user, a designer, a consultant, integrator, whoever it is. Well, this is the way I've always done it, and that's fine. The way you've always done it might be the right way to continue to do it, but you have to have those conversations. And as a consultant, give them all of the options. Okay, you've always done it this way, but have you considered A, B, C, and D? And what are the implications of those? But you can't just do that with one party. You can't just do it with IT, you can't just do it with AV. You have to do it together and come up with a solution that works holistically for all of them. Because like Gareth said, they do want to work together, but you have to bring them all in at the same time.
Yep.
And you were highlighting to me recently that you've had more budget when you work together with them.
Excellent. Example, on the physical security side, in a command and control environment, there's a lot of metadata that comes in from these systems. How end users use that data will open up different buckets of spending for them to fit out what they want to do technology-wise. So for example, if you're using metadata from your physical security system to understand how your rooms are being used, then when you program your next space, you can say, okay, well I had 14 huddle rooms and 6 large conference rooms. I see the huddle rooms are constantly booked. I can see it from the access control data. I can see it from the occupancy sensors. But my medium conference rooms are not being used. The next time I spend money to fit out a floor, I'm going to maximize my huddle rooms and only include 1 conference room. So you're now influencing real estate, you're influencing IT, you're influencing how MEP is going to be planned to cool the space, to cool the technology and provide the power for it. So now your bucket for your spend to fit out your new space is now not just your security budget, it's security, it's IT, it's facilities, it's everything together.
Gareth, what about you? What do you think the evolution looks like from your perspective?
I think.
Or in an ideal world, let's say. What should the evolution look like?
In an ideal world, we all end up speaking that same language. You know, that convergence happens. You know, and as more things, I feel, we're going to move a lot away from baseband connections and move more towards, IP native technologies. But as we do that, no, we're going to become network engineers. Yeah. And that's with the camera I'm looking into right now. It's got a network cable.
Exactly right.
Yep.
That's exactly right.
We're building them here. We're building it all the time. But the reason why we've got 100 gig ports on some of the equipment that's in this building right now is we didn't invent that.
Yeah.
We inherited that.
Yeah.
We can afford it because someone else is making millions of these parts and we're using some of them.
Yeah. Let's talk about, you kind of touched on it there, but scalability.
Yeah.
I think obviously why so much of this is moving to the network. I mean, even thinking about an entertainment example, we've got the Sphere right over here in Las Vegas.
Yeah.
You couldn't do that with baseband, right?
No.
So what are some of the, I guess, unique challenges, though, as it relates to cyber security, things like that might be hurdles in that continuing that AV-IT convergence?
So, the old knowledge, but it still applies because not everyone's done the recent exams. We used to be able to become a CCIE in routing and switching for Cisco, which is their top level qualification in routing and switching. And multicast was an optional course. So you could become one of the best people in the world in routing and switching and never touch multicast.
Yeah.
And multicast is probably one of the few things where we really are unique. It's not used as much in the standard AV world. It is becoming a lot more in the physical world. A lot of CCTV cameras now.
Correct.
People are building for multicast, but it's one of the IT technologies that we've really adopted and having to teach back to the IT teams in customers' organizations. But equally, their expectation of being able to log in, everyone here who works for a corporate, you log in to your laptop. Your laptop, probably when you go to the office, auto connects to the Wi-Fi. You don't connect it anymore, it's already adapted. But that'll be the same login for Salesforce, and customers are more and more expecting to be able to log into their audio-visual devices with that same corporate login, with the same single password policy somewhere in the cloud that makes sure everyone's got the right connection. And that's really driving that connection to the corporate network, the disappearing of that little isolated network that AV used to live on.
Gareth loves air gaps.
I might have a pet peeve about air gaps, I'll admit it. But the problem with those sort of air gap networks, and especially if you haven't involved IT, who updates that switch? Who checks that the firmware's up to date? Who checks? Who's looking at the log files of a system that is isolated in its own little space? So sitting on the corporate network has some really, or at least on the wider network, or at least IT knowing about it, can really help in that, like, someone else will do your updates for you on the switches. Someone else will look at your log files, you know. One of the things the IT world's really adopted is humans don't read logs anymore. Machines read logs, because they can read a lot more of them a lot quicker than we can.
Right, yeah.
So making sure your log files go to the same location, lean on IT. They'll look at those logs for you automatically. They've got those tools. So I think, like leaning towards that space and really understanding how they can help us. You know, these automation tools that they've got, single sign-ons, update policies, update systems, you know, can really take some of the effort away from what we're trying to do. But we need to talk standards when we do that. There are some companies that have done some things which are genuinely from a good place. They've tried to make sure that things are really easy for people to do stuff, and but they've done it in a way that doesn't apply to the standard. So if X company then tries to plug into Y company later on, it can't. And then you're suddenly having to redo all the work that you did on that first one the more traditional way that probably takes a bit longer and is a bit harder, but because you now need to connect to that other device. And I think that's where potentially we've got some gaps where they were built with the best intentions, but you know, it's the quick way for maybe the integrator or the end user community that now that quick way is longer and takes more effort.
Right. David, are there any examples that you can think of, maybe without naming names or anything, in terms that illustrate some of those gaps that you know?
Absolutely, without naming specifics, but yeah. So Gareth and I were actually talking about this earlier. When day one, everything looks great. You specified a wonderful system. Integrator does a great job putting it in. But then what the client remembers afterwards is day 10, day 20, and beyond when, oh, I want to be able to do this. Well, no, you can't. I want to be able to do this. Well, no, you can't, because everything is separated. You're not on the same network. You can't do what you want it to do. So they're not going to remember how you designed, how you installed a wonderfully functioning system that met their needs. They're going to remember every time, like Gareth and I were talking about earlier, where you said, no, it can't do that. So I think having the conversations, as we mentioned before, early on, understanding the needs, understanding the standards, and getting those people to talk together will alleviate those problems. You know, what as a design consultant, what I hate doing is doing something strictly performance-based, having something that is then brought in that barely meets the performance requirements, and at the end of the day, the client isn't satisfied. We want to do our due diligence early in the process, have the tough conversations that we need to have all the stakeholders there, and you're just setting yourself up for success and future scalability and future-proofing your systems and your design. Because at the end of the day, they're putting this either capital investment with OpEx costs going forward. You want to make sure they're getting the most for their investment.
And this is particularly a space where the control room space really faces this, because a lot of these control rooms, they're 7-8 years since they've last had a refresh, potentially longer.
Even more.
Some of them a lot longer. But so therefore their mentality of what you can achieve is based on what their experience. They're not AV consultants. They're not people who wander around the show floor and see all this stuff. So that's, you know, you get a brand new system, that I like to call it the day 20 problem of, can this get to Sarah's office? Because they've never had that option before. And I think that's really one of the things as an organization we learn, making sure that we built stuff that can be that sort of scalable, or at least let you do some more interesting things with it, because as David says, they won't remember the spec. It ticked the box in the spec. They'll remember you said no.
Well, it sounds like a change in mindset. You know, in terms of, like you said, that day 2, day 10, day 20, especially with, I would imagine, with networks being able to access those systems much easier than the past, right? Like you could still be supporting something remotely, for example, and so I think those expectations of end users, is it fair to say that they've increased because of all that the network can do for you compared to maybe AV systems 10, 20 years ago, something like that?
I would say yes. I think, people are afraid of an educated, or some people are afraid of an educated end user or client. Yes, it can be more challenging, but I think it's better having a client who's more educated. They know what they want, they know what they need. They're not stuck in the old silo or old mantra. So I do think it's come a long way in the past, 5, 10, 20 years. And I think as standards are developed more, and as we have these tough conversations, like Gareth said, some of these conversations are more challenging and more in-depth at the onset of a project, but the end result is so much better.
Because everybody, I feel like, says, oh, we should have been involved at the beginning of this project. We should, what does that look like in an idea? Because I feel like everybody just says, oh, we all want to be, I mean, is it just that simple that everybody, whether it's AV, IT teams, cybersecurity teams, right? Like, is it just a matter of getting everyone involved from the outset? I mean, is it that simple?
Yeah, it can be. And it's also like, not everyone has to turn up to every meeting.
Correct.
Yeah? But if everyone's at least in the initial couple, you can work out where, what, how. Maybe you end up splitting off into like mini meetings where like cyber, IT, and one of the technical people from the integrator or the consultant has a little like their own little group that meets a little bit later. But if everyone's in that first meeting, then
who does that responsibility fall on then? Is it more of the integrators? Is it?
I mean, it's the end user, really.
End user,
And it's a bit different for me too. But go first, please.
But equally, the end user doesn't know.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Right. So when a consultant's involved, it is on the consultant to make sure.
Yeah. So for me, we work for end users direct, we work for architects as well. Yep. So for me, it depends on how the relationship is that we have, whether it's direct to end user or direct to an architectural partner of ours. But getting in at the concept level before plans are finalized, before architectural plans are finalized, because as I was telling Gareth before, architectural implications, operational expectations, technology constraints or expectations, it's a three-legged stool. You have to tackle all of them together in order to balance it. So getting early on in the process, from an infrastructure perspective, from a cybersecurity perspective, you balance the stool that way. It's not, you have to do it early. So for me, it's either having the architect have everybody in on the design team, including all the sub-consultants, the end users, but we as the design consultants are the voice of the user for the technology side. We have to say, bring your IT folks, bring your cybersecurity folks, bring your facility managers, bring anybody who's going to interface or interact with these systems. What are your challenges? What are your pain points? What do you do? What are your operations? But early on, so we can have the technology and the design complement the workflow, not force a workflow into a technology that we designed on our own.
Can you think of any examples where perhaps someone wasn't at the table, again, not naming names here or anything, but what were the ramifications then of them not being involved earlier, whether it's, again, one of those subsets that we just mentioned?
I recently had a project with and sort of I got pulled in to a call, and the cyber team turned up on the second install. So the first install had gone well, like everyone was really happy with the system, to the point where they'd expanded it, and then I suddenly got a call going, would you mind joining a meeting? Because the integrator had got a call going, what's this thing? And so we got through. And the more interesting thing is, cyber eventually, they're looking at now ordering a system for themselves. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a negative process, but it is that moment of, we don't know necessarily how this meeting's gonna come out, because you've not engaged them early enough to go,
right,
I'm sure we can meet the spec, but what is the spec? You don't know that spec until you have that conversation.
And is that, you think, in part because AV cybersecurity in particular is relatively new, maybe kind of like we were talking about single sign-on, things like that before, but is it just because it's not top of mind with AV, or
well, I think
where's the disconnect, I guess?
I think there's partly on the cyber teams themselves, but also we're not describing ourselves in their language. So I did the AV security hardening talk on Tuesday. And one of the things we're like, tell your cyber team to think of it as an IoT device. It is same as Wi-Fi access point. Pretty much everything AV nowadays, not with some exceptions, is a computer. With some RAM and a processor and things like that. But it's a hardened device quite often. It does its own thing, but you can't explain necessarily what IPMX is to a cyber team, and they won't necessarily care. But if you tell them it's an IoT device, that fits a box in their brain, right? And then they'll tell you what they expect from an IoT device, and that's great because you now know what you need to achieve, or now need to have that conversation on where do we go from here. But it's their cyber teams quite often. Their job is reactive. And some of them are very lucky and get very early in the conversation and part of procurement and things like that. But a lot of their job is being reactive. So sometimes their natural response is to stop. Because that's when they've got a big incident, that's their job to stop it and find a way around it. So when you surprise them, that's their natural reaction is like, oh, wait, let's stop everything a sec.
Right.
So actively engaging these people, like I say, they're being paid to make sure that the things the company wants to do are done. Like in a safe way, but they still have to make sure that things happen.
Right. Yeah. What about education? You had mentioned kind of CCIE earlier. Avixa, we have our ANP certification. Is there a gap, you think, that still needs to be filled in terms of education, IT for AV professionals, and maybe vice versa? What do you think, David?
I'm a big proponent of educating everybody on everything. I mean, I went to school for teaching originally. I'm not a teacher, but it's something that's very passionate about. I think having the most knowledge available in everything's IP-based, IT-based now. Everything's an IoT device. Yes, I think there should be more education for security folks, for IT folks, for AV folks. Regardless of the industry, it's all on one network. So yes, I think bridging the gap and sharing that information more holistically instead of having it siloed by one specific discipline, absolutely.
What do you think, Gareth?
There's a concept of M-shaped people in education, where you have multiple hats on things that you've learned and put time into. And as you grow your career, you probably are not just stood here. You probably have. Well, I know you've done some more interesting interviews with me. You've done some really interesting digital marketing work. I am a cyber nerd nowadays, but I have thrown screens up on a wall, and I'm a maker. But having different hats that you can pull on, I think is always valuable. And as cyber's never going to get easier. Updates are never going to get further apart. So I do think if you're like new in the industry, there's a nice opportunity to really sort of separate yourself from the crowd and actually go out and learn something on either whether it's networking, whether it's cyber, whether it's electrical. If the more hats that you can pull on, I think always gives you more interest, and more value, frankly, to be in the room in the first place.
Well, you think too, as we think about the future generation of AV and digital natives, and so I would imagine that in some ways the younger generation is going to be maybe more comfortable with kind of IP and network, just because it's
more familiar with it.
That they're a lot.
I didn't get my first cell phone until I was 20 years old. Now my daughter's 7 and she operates an iPhone better than I do.
Right.
So
I do think though there's a gap maybe on the troubleshooting side. When my first PC. But
you don't have to say the year. It's fine.
But it's all right. It's more the operating system will age me. But trying to get computer games to work was an effort.
Yeah.
And half the time you got them to work, it broke something else in the computer.
Yeah.
And you couldn't look up how to fix it.
Yeah.
You had to read the manuals, you had to work it out, you had to fix it.
Right.
My mum was a nurse, and she spent a vast amount of money of a nurse's wage buying us a computer back when they were rare. So trying to fix it before Mum found out that I'd broken the computer was, Whereas like installing an app or downloading a game, I think there's maybe a gap there. So learning troubleshooting, going in signal path, because that's really all every troubleshooting. Doesn't matter if you're troubleshooting physical security systems. We've got a clock in front of us, but power is signal path. So I do think, that's one of the ones where I think digital natives haven't had to have they've had an easier time on getting things to work.
That's
sometimes.
interesting. Yeah. So less hands-on experience in some ways, like you said, of breaking something and learning how to put it back together.
Yeah.
Learn the basics first.
Yeah. I was going to say, what other advice would you have, David, for someone who's
learn how
beginning their
to
career?
crawl before you want to run. I think the next generation of any professional, as I've seen, they want to jump right in. They want to go into the latest and greatest technology. That's all fine and good, and the enthusiasm is great, but you have to learn the basics first.
Yeah.
Learn the basics first. Understand the functionality. Understand whatever it is that you're getting into at the very basic level, and spend time there. Like Garrett's point, old gaming systems, not even computer systems. I had the first Nintendo, and blowing in the cartridge when it wouldn't work and slamming it back into. This new generation of adults or professionals, different challenges and different ways of looking at things. Not saying the old way is the best way, not saying the new way is the best way, but understanding both. Spend the time to learn all the ways to do things. So, sure, there's an analogy in there that explains it better, but yeah.
I'd always like to say, if you ask 4 engineers how to solve a problem, you get 8 answers.
Yeah.
Well, the example I thought of too was I always I have some friends who work on cars, and they say the cars from the 60s, the 70s, it's better to learn on those because it's the basics, and then you from there they only got more complicated from there.
Now cars are computers. Right. Come on, think about it now. Yeah, everything.
Right.
It's go learn on a 70s Chevelle before you go try to update a brand new Ferrari.
Right.
Yeah, I would agree.
It's a lot easier to learn a carburetor than it is trying to learn electronic ignition systems.
Right.
Exactly. But one will help you learn the other.
Yeah,
correct.
It's not lost knowledge doing it. So
you would suggest, even for someone, start broad almost in your career and try to gain as much experience, and then as you maybe find your niche, begin to go deep there. Is that what you would suggest?
That's personally, I love that approach. Broad. What is it? A jack of all trades, master of none.
Yeah.
So understand all of the different components. I think having that broad spectrum or that broad growth path early on will help you settle on the niche that you find the most interest in and that you belong in as a professional. You might not even know. Like I said, I went to school for teaching, and now I'm a security engineer. You broaden your horizons, you learn the most you can, and then you'll fall into the right niche for you. I think, starting off broad and then narrowing your focus.
That's great.
And skills never have no value. So I'm a member of a makerspace.
Yeah.
I professionally, I make systems of systems and things like that. But learning how to do woodwork and things like that. But I learned from setting up a workshop about how people throw through a building, which has use later on. It's amazing how bits of odd knowledge come back and are really helpful later on. I recently had to, Makerspace I was part of, we rebuilt an entire warehouse. So suddenly, the years me running around doing audio visual, driving a genie lift around this building, not a problem. It just silly things like that come back, and how a laser cutter works. Suddenly, you learn a bit of 3D design, you learn a bit of 2D design, which as we sort of build systems, half of it is documentation in a design.
Yeah.
So it's all, I think, never stop learning and never stop being willing to learn something brand new, except that you don't have to be the expert.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And learning with hands-on, I think, is critical. You know, because
100%.
all the examples we're talking about cars, building warehouses, all those things, but
It
it
falls
does
back
add
to the same,
it adds
yeah.
that up. Yes, and it will help the future generation with the AV-IT convergence. See how we bring it full circle.
Learning how
And
to
we
crimp.
need the next generation of up-and-comers. You know,
That's right.
we need to continue to feed the industry. I mean, what do they say? It's a massive industry, but a very small world. You know,
Yeah.
we come to Infocom, we go to the various shows, we see a lot of the same people, but we want to, at least me, I want to help educate the next generation.
Yep.
You know, not that I know everything, because I don't. Not that Gareth knows everything, but share what we know, and then that person has our knowledge, their knowledge, they share it on to the next person, that knowledge is now 3 times stronger, and just, you know, helping energize and help creating that next generation of professionals. Giving back.
Yep. Well,
And also, at some point, I'd like to retire.
I have a 7-year-old, I'm not retiring anytime soon.
you'll be around. David will be around for a while.
I'll be here, I'll be here.
But Gareth, David, thank you so much for joining me. This has been really great. And yeah, hopefully, maybe next year we won't have to keep talking about it, but maybe a few more years.
Maybe.
We'll see. Yeah.
We'll see.
Yep. Cool. Thank you guys for joining
you
me.
for having us.
Enjoy the rest of the show, okay?
Thank
Thank you
so
very much. Take care.
Thanks.